Today is the Dragon Boat Festival, or the Double Five Festival. It is on the May 5th on lunar calendar. I think people celebrate it to commemorate the death of a great poet, Qu Yuan. That's part of the origination of this festival. In order to commemorate this poet who committed suicide by drowning himself, people would drop sticky rice balls into river, into water, so that the fish and nagas won't eat the corpse of the poet. Rather, they would choose to eat the sticky rice. So that's part of the origination. And then the other part is about the belief that the month of May is rather the most poisonous or vicious of all. So people would burn moksar or burn incense or even make smoke offering, so to dispel obstacles, to get rid of misfortunes. So that's a belief. But any kind of belief would have some power because everything's made with the mind. Therefore, on this special day, I would give you the oral transmission of Yamantaka as well as the Vajra armor. I'm not completely sure where I received the Vajra armor, but I'll give you the Yamantaka's sadhana and mantras or transmission. Today, many people send me message saying that keep safe on Dragon Boat Festival. On one hand, we can eat the sticky rice ball. Well, it's good, but really I don't like sticky rice, so I kept my eyes shut and forced myself to eat a bit. Sometimes maybe because you don't really like certain food based on your personal habitual patterns or your karma even, it doesn't matter how much people talk about the merits of it, I just really don't like it. Anyhow, I will follow people's requests and people's custom. So I had some sticky rice, and I think the most important to dispel obstacle is to give you is to chant the mantra of Yamantaka. There's so many calamities going on in this world nowadays. Let it be the farmers or the non-humans. I think many people need different ways of protecting themselves. This is given by Phuntsok Rinpoche.
su ha ngim changwa ni je ba ma yang tang zam dam ba yersa la so jang jer na sam jur ngam be ja dang ka tarab lang jer dom za dagla sam jur ngam ba yi dang yi ja dang no pi ge yamen ta kim turtup ki zurung zir ji non jang lag jer ji ji jang sha go man mo ja wo gu ba dang sat dang 좀 소거 땅선 좀 샴지그 다체 다 답적직 버체 지 르디 르금 추르데게 쳬브다가 잘레 남기로 화우 전부 적냐나 어자풍 먹본 더접나 초레 남기 에마호 사마야 디디디야 망갈람 산지조노 종종라 장저와더 자노 랑정동 나랍저 장주선의 기브르규 셈접되는 단지질 등을 근동 자르쇼 되나도 맘저 죽음냠니 또 똑버르 쇼 셔성 메토 부당 스낭스르 자제 루모즈 자르로 신농도요 십적 범면남 Jahur Chu Kordon Jela Mer Banzer Argan Badam Belde Balogan Gadaneve de Shadabrat Su Ha Topana Chuang Le Chu Kurtomba Hayil Hartir Jundum Dorjexet Xiljexet Diki Ditchin Marum Dervi La Churgir Kunjik Zola Shamsur Todo Hormon Derner Jara Jarjir Dengang Sindab Demba Sonjan Zemeba Dembati Tandar Del 당들은 직바체레 타르지르지호 게완딤존 딕슨 랍시임템 가짐 조이톤도 더니티 릭통 도밈군 본잠바야 라지름 제르니 센터 샹츠 쇼고 시브조 노도진 로원 잡담 제반로 겐든딤 브샵르 담바 코르노 좀 당가 톰저라 담바 연어니 비 프라시 쇼 트라시 쇼 리박 도르지 고트브노 엄파마 샤르 팟 넘버징 난가나 다야다 서로 거르다 하나하나 벤저나 Rakya Suha Snug Dati Tangan Ranir Kachi Charles Gur Chabom Tanaka Yepe Dorji Yun to Chag Chips Puggut Kamnak Chiv Jarni Chagning Mertum Cho Ranger Puggut Fogman Cho Nardun Hurtum Zubr Sam Chagning Megudum Garti Na Cha Tsatsar Taramcho Nardun Chag Mayang Mula Ngagda Go Ngagde Ganjina Omo Behana Kezana De He Ho Bosha Ma Hera Ho Jna De Ke Be Shi Na Da Bana Ya Su Ha.
Well, that was the oral transmission I've given you on this Dragon Boat Festival. So that's the first part of the things I would like to address. And the second is that I would like to share with you about something that is kind of personal, because I don't really like to share anything personal. I think maybe because I'm rather conservative when it comes to me, anything that relates to me personally, including when I was traveling with Phuntsok Rinpoche, there were lots of stories happened to me as well, but I didn't really share those stories with others. Last year I wrote a book, Memoir of a Dream, Journey with Phuntsok Rinpoche. It was a story happened about 30 years ago when I was traveling with Phuntsok Rinpoche on the pilgrimage and teaching, including Bhutan, Nepal, and India. And every time there are some things that's more relating to myself. I don't really feel like writing anymore. This is true. So, well, I wrote some down and I didn't write my whole experience there. However, anyhow, I have two things to share with you that is kind of personal. The first, I'm not quite sure if it's meaningful. Maybe it is. So you will see. The first thing is that I was born in Luhur County, and there's a public area, a public field over there. I was born in 1962. Right over there in that public area. But over there, I think in our area, we don't really write the exact date of birth. So on my ID, it still says 1963 is my birthday. Just like some secluded areas, we don't really write those exact dates. Anyhow, when Phuntsok Rinpoche was still alive, a lay practitioner once offered me 60 or 70,000 RMB and asked me to build a stupa there to commemorate the place of my birth, but I didn't really pay much attention to it and kept the money lying there without really doing much about it. A few years ago, someone else asked me to build a stupa, and I noticed that there are many Khenpos and Khenmos built stupas. So I didn't agree to it, but it didn't stop them either. And later on, I gave the money that was offered by the lay practitioner to them, and they built a small stupa. So I never really been there, never really took this thing to heart. About a few days ago, on June 21st, a few of our Tibetan ethnic workers went on a pilgrimage trip to a few monasteries nearby, but somehow they went to the stupa. And over there, the group of people said that they saw a beautiful rainbow. I wasn't sure if it's true or not, but maybe it is, because but the rainbow was quite special because on that day there was no rain, there was blue sky with white clouds. That day was quite special because it was solar eclipse. Also, it was the last day of Sagadawa, the day of Father's Day. So they said the group of staff members said that they saw a rainbow right on top of the stupa. At the moment, when I heard them saying that, I wasn't sure. But later on, a Khenpo called me and said that, well, I heard that there's a rainbow. Is that real or not? And I replied by saying, well, I think those people who saw it still are alive. Why didn't you ask them? Because I wasn't there. Well, I think it is meaningful, somewhat, because the building of that stupa is quite unique, and the location of it is very unique. Usually we would see lots of rainbows after the rain, but on that specific day it was blue sky and white clouds. So I think it is a kind of auspicious sign. Of course, I don't grasp onto it. I don't grasp on anything substantial. Don't even mention something insubstantial like rainbow. There's really nothing to grasp onto. However, I really wish that this could be an auspicious coincidence to accumulate good karmic connections. Maybe let it be beneficial to the sick. Let it be beneficial to contribute to longevity and to really everything. I'm not sure if it is the cause and condition for that, but maybe it's okay to share this thinking with you. And then there's another rainbow, story of a rainbow. About 2015, I was giving a teaching at the Education Institute of Beijing University. It was June the 6th, a Sunday. The lecture started around 2 o'clock p.m. and it was supposed to last only for 2 hours, but the lecture actually ended at 4:30 because many people asked questions. And on that day, many people attended that lecture. Originally, there was a 500 people auditorium booked, but 600 or 700 people showed up, so they had to sit around the staircase or corridors. And then at the end of that lecture, in fact, I've been to Beijing University a few times, all the way from 2009 to 2019. I think I've given lectures for 9 times within 10 years. But nothing really happened on the other days. However, on that particular day, back in 2015, when I came out from that lecture, there was a beautiful rainbow that appeared on top of the sky. We came out from the East Gate, and I remembered riding on the car, and the rainbow was lasting for a long period of time, and it was really long, a big rainbow. Some professor sitting in the car told me that after living for 50 or 60 years, this is really the first time they saw such a beautiful rainbow. Of course, there are many people who grasp onto the auspicious sign or symbol of the rainbow very much because they would feel it's quite auspicious and really fortunate. Anyhow, I think in many aspects, I did have rather a successful propagation of the Dharma and benefiting sentient beings. So I'm going to show you the short clip of this rainbow. Well, it's common to see rainbows in the mountains, but I think you can also see rainbows in the cities as well. I'm sure from wherever you're from, Beijing and other cities, you must have seen rainbows as well. Phuntsok Rinpoche once met with someone back in 1986. He met with this so-called big teacher from abroad, and then that person told him, you know, when I was giving teaching, there was a rainbow at so-and-so place. And Phuntsok Rinpoche right away replied saying that the rainbow would appear if there is appropriate sunlight, raindrops, and moisture in the air. It's not necessarily your merit. And that Lama, who passed away now, his name is Jigme Rinpoche, and at that time he kept quiet. And then he continued saying, you know, I have lots of miraculous powers. And Phuntsok Rinpoche appeared to be not so happy about that, not so flattered at all, and he continuously to refute one after another. So rainbows are not necessarily anything significant, but Phuntsok Rinpoche would use those opportunities to see the dependent arising, to observe it, such as rainbows at Deer Park in India, or the foundation stone laying ceremony of the great shrine hall in Laronggar at the time, as well as when Phuntsok Rinpoche was giving teaching on the 6 bardos at Dawood County and so on. On one hand, of course, it is really the blessings from the 3 jewels. It is also the inconceivable power from the dependent arising. And because we have such impure eyes, we can only perceive the external phenomena. We can't really see the inner realization that is the merit of wisdom and compassion. So we could see some significance of such auspicious coincidence, but we should also understand whatever is outside, appears outside, that is in fact dreamlike and illusion-like. They're not anything substantial. However, it really depends on, how you perceive it really depends on your own faith, your own wisdom, and so on. Everyone's very different. I personally don't really like to talk about these things because really there's nothing to talk about. I myself am so ordinary, let it be giving a teaching or traveling around, there's really nothing to talk about. It's very ordinary. But sometimes when there's conditions, I feel like it's still an opportunity to share some with you, then I will. But most of the time I don't really share about these things, including Phuntsok Rinpoche's, including the longevity supplication that Phuntsok Rinpoche composed for me. When people chanted in front of me, I would walk away right away, because I don't really like this kind of superficial flattery. People would say it in front of me. But maybe, I think it could be also an auspicious dependent arising. It could be beneficial for beings, but I'm not quite sure. Anyhow, today, because this is the Dragon Boat Festival, or one of the most poisonous month of the whole year, I think maybe people would need some auspicious dependent arising. Of course, I understand there are people who would think that this is just superstition, but there are people who would feel that this is rather quite uncommon scene. So anyhow, I think whatever way you perceive it, that's all reasonable, that's fine. That was the stories I wanted to share with you before the actual class. Now let's get into the actual teaching. Well, let me give you the oral transmission on the transforming suffering and happiness into enlightenment first. Well, it's raining again, isn't it? It's been raining a few times within a day, although in the morning it was quite clear. I heard that there's quite a bit of flood. Have you watched the news? You did? So can you share some with us? Yes, flooding in Chongqing. Any more? So you didn't watch the whole news? You didn't watch all the news. Okay, all right.
Nyamsa Tobin Jigba Mepe Sankirtavi Namjura Shavayan, Jerter Shijan Blow de Goyan, Jeksan, Tapsan, Jeksan Lam Tapzanwa, Li Mater Bajana Nadian, Semter Bijan, Gajetar, the Samji, Mechipi, they were Warla Royante, Gardam Bochi, Titi Kano, Dukum Jid, Jigburn Dignar, Jojo, Stidna Nana Natrup shit. Nagyokshid jiba jixson dans tsonso huiznak sermger dixir melak chgne jmabjang chela yang chi yang jine nimber she partarde semjar til lamkir ti donor she diglam dingor lamkir ti tangor shina sem lisim les rong tangin zan chabarjan arnam devlagdan jab laqsuq jirtsawa tsum phusum sobrub she bi mangr yang dorang zap Zapper Corte, Kitbala Machakbe, Rapt, Shongbi, Tsutum Cabarjan, Tens of Shetchang, Digbala, Dungurla, Manjikbe, Tsutumte, Yonsa Tabrashipi Sherde, Jimba Tsutum Tistendam, Zopa Tsutum Tabrasheti, Sombe Shiso, Tartan Durter, Janwala, Lam Tumbur, Lepana, Dei Chushi. Di Chukin Jimartava, Kiva Kimu Sandro Startok name, Joroti and Gupatina, no more dinger token Jigbamit, Jibatarm, Joma Yeno. Tombir Namter Danjana, Shanchi Mavni Kondo, Kurlo Gerber Get starter der Pave, Neran Zaner, Kapshet Trabo la Jim, Number Jigbe Randon, Dustus Tobala, Tird Ronim, Guber Tambano. Shanchi Nini, Woman Givarta. Lhada mi wombor namgi jep shurub lanjan of devi yoshit tamche tif nimker tapadan jamzir barar donze shua gi shuvadan jamze omo chigme mo motson shuti kuran de padan gerbo mevjin ji yirtir dağsam dar tachi ji nir va sorala soba tum togmen gerame par lung mugr var tabr jigbe semjin ji ton shepala rohnyung gubro tando ndo jo qagdam bar kirdig kirna kadngan mandonjang dignar kadngan mandonjar kirna kyoshi cheva jibir namtar jan namjin charjezi yen dangje shadna rang chejang cher nyam ba retjang rangni chugin go nyomba la wachang joshit amgne changgan tanni shamang naqs pribago
Okay, that concludes our classes. How many classes have we had on this teaching? This is the 10th. Okay, that's good. 10 classes. That's good. Well, I think having opportunities to give teachings and listening to the Dharma, in fact, is quite... In fact, it's already quite fortunate already. We should be happy about it.
怎么现在好像有点刚才没有念那个是吧？냥 제제모 소도님이 정도는 뭐는 전부는 감죠 답답을 다른 건 참도 실물도 좀 특제 장라 기시험 잘 외투과 이제
In order to liberate all sentient beings, let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. So let's get into the actual teaching. This is the last part of this text. Previously, we've already studied how to transform suffering into enlightenment in terms of relative and absolute truth, and then we've already talked about transforming happiness into enlightenment in relative truth as well. Now, let's continue with this teaching. If we cannot practice when we're suffering because of all the anxiety we go through, and we cannot practice when we're happy because of our attachment to happiness, then that rules out any chances of our practicing Dharma at all. That is why there is nothing more crucial for a practitioner than this training in turning happiness and suffering into the path. This is quite important to remember, because people tend to get turned down from practicing if they're not keeping up with good health, they're not having good circumstances, or they have lots of worries, no food and no clothing, not in good mood, no good weather, and so on. We have all different kinds of suffering, but if you were to get stopped because of all those conditions, we would never have opportunity to practice. You can think that I'm suffering a lot, I cannot practice, my work's not going well, my family's not going very harmoniously, and my health is, I'm not keeping up with my good health, and so on. This is, if you were to just wait till suffering to pass and then practice. This is really how mundane beings usually do. They wait for things to be over and then get into practice again. Similarly, when you're happy, you tend to dwell in happiness. And that's what we tend to do very often as well in our habitual patterns. If you feel happy, if you want to go search for happiness, such as take a trip, and if you want to go, and if you want to find happiness in watching TV, to go to the bar, to eat and drink, and listen to songs and watch TV shows, and dwell in that happiness, and then you don't practice again. You could find all different kinds of excuses. Oh, I went out with my friends. I'm too successful in my career. I don't have time to practice. So people would find all different kinds of excuses. I am too painful, therefore I can't listen and practice. I am too happy, therefore I don't have time to practice. Even if you're neither happy nor painful, you're staying in this idle state that is rather kind of in the state of no thinking, in the state of just rather waiting, and spending your life really unexamined. Then in this way, you're squandering your life without practicing the Dharma at all. Because in our life, we have either suffering or happiness. There's really nothing else. So for practitioners, there's really nothing more pitiful than that. giving all kinds of excuses of not engage in actual practice, because your life is really short. If you do not practice because of this on one day and for the other day, then you really don't have any opportunity at all. For the previous great masters, they're exactly different. They're the exact opposite from us. They practice when there's suffering. Especially when you look at all the historical changes happened in Tibet, throughout all different kinds of changes, they never give up their own practices in meditation, in giving teachings, in their own practices. And they don't give up when they attained so-called happiness, the worldly happiness, worldly success, such as fame and wealth and so on. Even once they get those, they don't give up either, because they don't dwell in those kind of happiness or enjoyment at all. But I think those are the things that we are going to face as well as practitioners, and we should look at how we deal with it rather than how the great masters would deal with it. Either you get really happy and dwell in the happiness if you have wealth and fame and look really pretty, and you would think, oh, I'm so happy, and at that time you don't practice at all. You would throw away your Dharma texts 1,000 miles away from you. Or sometimes you get really painful, you get suffering a lot, and you would feel that, oh, I'm suffering so much, I'm suffering more than the beings in the hell realm and the hungry ghost realm, in the animal realm. And around that period of time, you really don't have the strength in your mind to practice either. So with all the ups and downs of happiness and suffering, with all the alternations of happiness and suffering, there are people who don't have any strength or any opportunity to practice at all, and that is really pitiful. Of course, we don't know what's going to happen in our later life. It could be happy, it could be suffering, and it's really based on everyone's very different karma. Some people probably have more of an even life, not much of the big ups and downs. There are people who would be a little bit more pessimistic, have a stern face, and that's how they spend their life. And there are people who laugh and smile quite a bit, and there are people who have lots of changes, and there are people who change a lot in terms of their mentality and mood. So whatever things you would encounter in your life, whomsoever kind of person you are, whatever happens, I really encourage you not to give up your opportunity to practice. There are people who tend to say that I don't have time, I need to finish my chanting, and I'll fight with you after I finish my chanting. I think that's good. At least it shows that that person do care about practice, but also he does care about fighting with the other as well. So it's hard to say if it's good or not. Anyhow, this is not the worst situation. The worst situation is to give up practice altogether. So we should really practice while we're suffering and while we're enjoying. From the worldly perspective, I think it is really the best for people to have a rather steady personality. Don't have too many changes in your personality or your mood, because that would bring lots of insecurities to the people around you. So we should try our best to create a safe environment for everyone. Do not bring insecurity to others, where you would make people feel that, oh, this person's really great, and another time people would feel, oh, this person's really difficult to deal with. Don't create such big changes. Especially, I think, for people with a little bit better practice, a little bit better inner realization, even if they're going through a lot of suffering and a lot of difficulties, they can maintain certain kind of equanimity. Even if there's some kind of suffering going on in their mind, there's no way of you telling it at all. Unless, of course, if you can read other people's mind. There are Dharma teachers, if they have this kind of stable personality, then sometimes even if they're not really happy inside, but they would gently bring it out or give some hints to others, but they won't make it too obvious. But of course, there are people who get very excited and very enthusiastic about expressing their feelings. In the class, when they're giving classes, if they're really happy, they would dance around on top of their Dharma throne. But when they're suffering inside, then they would cry and wet the Dharma throne with their tears. This is really not very appropriate. Of course, there are great masters in the past who also appear to have a little bit of fluctuation in terms of their mood, such as the Venerable Atisha. Phuntsok Rinpoche sometimes also would appear, also would have this wrathful appearance, and sometimes it would have a very happy appearance. And sometimes he would really tear up when he sees sentient beings suffering. On the other hand, there are Dharma teachers, although have a quick temper, but people know this Dharma teacher has a quick temper, but he's a good person. Afterwards, he's fine. I think everyone's personality really is very closely correlated to the previous life's karma, and it has everyone's personality have big differences. Anyhow, do not give up in any situations. And if you do have this training, no matter where you live, in a solitary place or in the middle of a city, wherever you are, in the arana, in the retreat places, in the secluded area, you can stay. Unlike there are people who would say that, no, it's too lonely, I cannot stay here, I have to go tomorrow, I can only stay for one night. There are Dharma teachers who would visit different monasteries, but if the monastery is too secluded, they don't want to stay there for even one night. They would feel that this is too quiet, this is not what I want. And then they would go to a different monastery that locates in the city and would say, no, this is just too chaotic, I don't want to stay here for even one night. So maybe there's really no monastery that is good for you. And that the reason behind it is because that person cannot transform suffering and happiness into enlightenment. I think people are very different. The kind of people who can really transform happiness and suffering into enlightenment, they can practice at any place. Practice at a secluded area or chaotic area. They wouldn't keep on complaining about it being too secluded or too noisy. In fact, they wouldn't complain at all. But there are people who would complain about everything. All appearances have turned into enemies for them. Whatever people around you are like, good or bad, the bad people who's full of greed, anger, and ignorance, the good practitioners can get along with them. And they can probably use very skillful ways to help them to develop inner realization. And for the good practitioners or good friends, the practitioners can also get along with them. The true bodhisattvas, the ones who can truly transform happiness and suffering into enlightenment, they can accept the good people as well as the bad ones. Whatever you have to listen to, praise or condemnation, good words or bad, you never feel the slightest fear that it would bring you down in any way. There are people who would receive different kinds of slandering or maybe compliments, the so-called good and bad. They can they can accept all of them. They won't be afraid of the things that they won't be afraid of losing things. This is the kind of practitioners who can be called the lion-like yogi, the lion-like practitioner. Because this person has already attained the realization of no self. That practitioner knows that within samsara, after suffering it is happiness, and after happiness it is suffering. There's really no certainty no intrinsic existence of suffering and happiness. In the ultimate truth, everything is empty. When suffering appears, they would feel, oh, this is my opportunity to practice. When happiness appears, oh, this is my opportunity to practice. So for people who can transform it, they are not going to waste suffering nor happiness. They will seize such opportunities. Of course, you need long period of practice so that you can actually use it when suffering comes. Otherwise, you won't be able to use it right away when adversities happen to you right away. When people slander you, when your parents die, and so on. Whatever happens to you, maybe the happy things such as compliments and happy things, or sadness happens to you, such as hearing slandering and so on. In fact, you won't feel happy because of the things you want, and feel sad because of the things that you don't want happen to you. So I think this kind of teaching is really suitable for the modern people, especially if you can practice on it. There are people who, there are Khenpos, they would go out and have a summer field trip together. At first they would argue, and then later they don't want to see each other anymore. In fact, this is not being able to transform happiness and suffering into enlightenment. I don't think that really happens, doesn't it? I think after this teaching, people won't do that anymore. I think, in fact, you will create lots of obstacles for yourself as well as the path of practice if you cannot relate to others very well. In fact, in the samsara, not everyone could make you satisfied. Everyone has very different habitual patterns. There are people coming from Jamyang, the ones coming from Paragoyana, and the ones coming from celestial realm and from hell realm. Not everyone's going to suit your ways of thinking. So, for the ones who can transform happiness and suffering into enlightenment, they can really get along with anybody. But if your personality is just too different than everyone, just like the different shapes of yak horn, they're very curvy, and every yak horn looks very different. If you want to fit them in an organized way in one bag, it is not possible. There are people like that too. So at any time, I really hope that you can look into your own mind. I'm saying this because I consider that I am quite experienced in it. In Larongga or any other places, I think I do have good, I do practice it, and I think I get along with people from wherever they are. Maybe it's because I'm quite arrogant about it, or I'm really proud of it. But I can get along with people who's atheist, who's theistic, who's monastic, and the lay practitioners. I get along with the authorities. I get along with my gurus. I get along with my disciples. I get along with people with different view, though I would probably tell them my point of view view, but I don't really hold a grudge afterwards. I also would explain my different view. I think this is really, I think I can do it only because I practiced up on the teachings I received. Because you know my personality from my childhood. When I was a student, I fight with many people. In Tibet, when we want to fight with the other kids, we would then set a time and we would say we would fight. We would have a fight under this tree or beside the other spring or so. We would then we would set a time or schedule so that we can fight together. That's what we do at least. But now, after coming to Larongar, I don't really fight with others, right? After coming to Larongar, I never really told everyone that now let's go to the mandala, let's fight over there, let's go to the hotel, let's fight over there, at the gate of hotel, let's fight over there. So just like a lion, just like a snow lion who can freely wander at the snow mountains and not afraid of any other wild animals and beasts, a good practitioner, in fact, can be strong in any circumstances and at any place. Nowadays, many people do not have any sense of security. Why is that? Because they're so afraid of how other people would look at them, other people's view of them, and don't want to expose themselves, the true personalities. But if we can be a good practitioner, then we can be just like the great lion. The Satya Siddhi Shastra that is translated by Kumara Jiva, I think quite famous in mainland, talks quite a bit about the refutation from Mahayana to Hinayana, especially the part where the Hinayana thinks of as true existence. And within it, it says that with the wise and the foolish both experience happiness and suffering. However, the difference is that the wise do not generate greed towards happiness nor repulsion towards suffering. This is in fact quite different because everyone would experience happiness and suffering, same as monastic and lay practitioners, everybody. As long as you have not attained the first bhumi or the arhat, the fruition of arhat that transcend desire, then you will. But why the wise ones could transform the happiness and suffering into enlightenment, but the foolish ones can't? Because the wise ones do not feel painful, do not feel anger when he's going through pain, and do not generate greed and create more karma when he experiences happiness. And there's a huge gap, a huge difference between the mundane and the foolish and the wise. And then whatever you do, your mind will be happy, peaceful, spacious, and relaxed. The ones who can practice this, wherever you are, whatever you do, whomsoever you associate yourself with, whatever you eat, whatever you dress, you can do anything. And there's really, you're not constrained to a specific thing that you want. The wise ones, maybe he can wear something really luxurious and really beautiful, but he can also dress like a beggar. He can not give any care about whatever he dresses and wears. He can eat the delicious food and he can eat something that doesn't taste good at all. Because his mind is in fact quite spacious and relaxed, and the body might be living in this, and the whole attitude will be pure and everything will turn out excellently. Though this person's body may not be living in this impure world of ours, in this degenerated age in the cities, and people's body live in this impure realm, but your mind will experience the splendor of an unimaginable bliss like the bodhisattvas in their pure realms. This is really quite profound. So I really hope that you could read it again and again, study this text. Even if you cannot be like the bodhisattvas who don't have any suffering at all, but at least if you understand the teaching in this and slowly familiarize yourself with it, then I'm sure you will experience a lot of change in your life. Just like how people would suffer from chronic disease, if they can take medicine consistently and take care of their body slowly, then eventually there's a possibility for them to heal. Living in this world, though our body is impure, in this world that is impure, that is degenerated, there are lots of people with different wrong views and so on, but our mind, in fact, if we can practice transforming happiness and suffering into enlightenment, then we can experience this splendor just like the Pure Land, such as Mahatmaprata Bodhisattva, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, and Manjushri Bodhisattva, Kushitigarbha, and all of them. So wherever you go, you're not going to be bothered by afflictions, you're not going to be tortured by pain. So I really hope that we can live in this mundane world, eat and drink and sleep like such, but our mind can transcend this mundane world, can no longer be so sensitive and so painful all the time. So I really hope that we can do it. Just as how the Kadampa masters used to say, keep happiness under control, put an end to suffering. With happiness under control and suffering brought to an end, when you're all alone, this training will be your true friend. When you're sick, it will be your nurse. So, if you can transform happiness and suffering into enlightenment, then you can control happiness. You can keep it under control without letting it to generate arrogance or jealousy, laziness, smug, and all of those. I noticed that many people nowadays, they can endure suffering, but I think majority of people cannot control themselves anymore, especially once they get wealthy. Because you really need lots of merit to be able to enjoy the wealth. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy it at all. Just as there are people who earn some money right away, they would buy a car and show it off to others. Especially, I think, the Tibetans. Once they earn some money, they would buy a big golden ring. I think gold is no different than the rocks, really. And they would get really happy once they wear the golden ring. They would dance with it, just as nowadays in Tibet there are lots of performances to show off the amber and coral, and then whenever they dance or walk, you would hear the clacking sound. In fact, not many people actually have them. They're borrowed from others. I don't even think they have some of those precious agates themselves, but they borrowed it from others and to wear it as a show-off. Okay, I think I'll stop there. So we should keep the happiness under control. As a practitioner, if you're too happy, too excited, then you will be under hindrance in front of others. And when you're experiencing suffering, you should transform it into enlightenment as well. In this this way, whenever you're living alone, you can transform suffering into enlightenment. This is a great companion. You don't really need anyone else. As long as you can transform suffering into enlightenment, you can be happy. And when you're sick, you need a nurse to, you need the care from a nurse.
Who
would care for you, who would give you water and give you medicine and so on. But when you can transform suffering into enlightenment, then you don't need anyone else. Just as Milarepa said that at the time of my death, may there be nobody around me to hear, may there be nobody around me to weep for my death. May I die in this cave retreat, and that would make this yogi satisfied. So as practitioners, I really think that the ability of transforming happiness and suffering into enlightenment is really the best companion that you can have. Just as the great masters of Kadampa used to say, you won't feel bored, you won't feel suffering, you won't feel pessimistic, you won't feel being abandoned by the society or by your friends and family. You won't feel this way. On one hand, we can contemplate up on our previous karma. Whenever there is suffering, this is really the best opportunity for us to practice. When there is happiness, this is really the best opportunity to practice. The most important of all is that do not give up your practice. And whenever you're experiencing suffering and happiness, you should practice, you should do your daily practice and meditate. This is quite important. On the other hand, you should transform it. You should see happiness as favorable conditions as well as the suffering as favorable conditions. This is the secret of our mind. If you were to practice in this way, then suffering won't become an obstacle, neither will happiness. Otherwise, I think mundane beings could tend to be a little bit extreme. When we're suffering, we cannot transform it. We would fall into the extreme of generating anger and jealousy and so on. And we would do lots of unreasonable things which could lead to suffering of this lifetime and another. And when we're happy, we could be really extreme. We could be very careless and arrogant and then destroy self and other. The next one is a metaphor. It says that a goldsmith first removes impurities from gold, the impurities such as sand and little pebbles and so on from that ore, and then melts it. And doing this process by melting it in fire and then make it malleable by rinsing it over and over again in water. So you really need both fire and water. So in this way, it would become malleable. Through different kinds of cause and conditions, different procedures, the gold will become malleable. Similarly, it is just similarly with the mind. In fact, if you can use happiness as the path, you become weary and disgusted with it, and by taking suffering as a path, you make your mind clear and cheerful. So in such a way, then you will easily attain the extraordinary samadhi, which makes the mind and body capable of doing anything you wish. The samadhi of being at ease. That is a kind of samadhi for bodhisattvas. So your mind is very capable, it is malleable, it is gentle, everything would be easy. Abhidharma, in fact, there are specific descriptions about this kind of samadhi, about being clear and cheerful, about the mind and body being clear and capable of doing anything you wish. But look at our body and mind now. Our mind is so distracted that our mind does not listen to us at all. If you want your mind to stay here and be focused, it runs away. And just like a naughty child, if you want the child to do his homework, you said no, he has to play iPad. So our mind doesn't listen to us at all. This is, and then if our mind can be more tamed in this samadhi, then we can abide just like the king of a mountain. And when it's time for us to take on action, then we can just arrive at the target precisely, just like shooting an arrow. And what are the merits then of doing this? This instruction, I think, is the most profound of all, for it perfects discipline, the source of everything positive and wholesome. That is to say, the basis of the perfect discipline is in fact taking discipline, Pratimoksha vow, the Bodhisattva vow, and so on. If you want to perfect those disciplines, you need to have this teaching, the transforming suffering and happiness into enlightenment. Because not being attached to happiness creates the basis of the extraordinary discipline of renunciation. If you're being very happy, but do not grasp onto it, if you can view happiness as an illusion, as impermanent, as emptiness, as the nature of it is emptiness, if you can see happiness in such a way, then you can then observe your monastic vow. If you were to be able to transform it, then you will be able to observe any kind of vow you take, the lay practitioner vow or the monastic vow or the pratimoksha vow. Because lots of people who break their vows is because they don't know how to transform happiness into enlightenment, and because they grasp onto happiness as something solidly existing. And then not being afraid of suffering makes this discipline completely pure. So we're not afraid of suffering can also make your discipline pure as well. Because in such a way, we can transform we can generate renunciation. So as they say, generosity forms the basis for discipline, and patience is what purifies it. Because when we transform suffering, we practice upon patience, and then that would purify our precepts. And the fruition of such is patience. The fruition of observing precept is patience. Patience is transforming suffering into enlightenment. Because many people cannot transform suffering into enlightenment, it is mainly because they would generate anger. So this is the inference behind it. That's what is taught in the sutra. By training in this practice now, then when you attend the higher stages of path, this is what it will be like. According to the ornament of Mahayana Sutra Shastra, it says that understanding all phenomena is just illusion, then take birth just like entering a garden. For the kind of person who attained such understanding of emptiness, who have this realization of emptiness, that person could use wisdom and attain the truth or the nature of all phenomena. In fact, everything is like a dream, like an illusion in this relative world. And then with their great compassion, they can reborn in anywhere, in any place, just like entering in the garden. How many of you can recite this? If I've quoted it for so many times. If you still can't recite it, that means you didn't really put lots of attention into it. You should raise up your hand if you can recite it. I'll ask you to recite it for me. Yes? Okay, now you.
来，你们那边谁呗？那。
Well, very good. So only 2 people can recite it from their memory. Well, okay, that's good still.
这个还是要那个很重要啊。
Anyhow, this is in fact quite important. What it means is that if we were able to transform suffering into enlightenment, this kind of realization is in fact quite profound. According to Ornament of Mahayana Sutra Shastra, it says that this is the realization of first Bhumi Bodhisattva. In order to attain certain level, it means that they have to have that realization within. So once you can truly transform suffering into enlightenment and understand that in fact everything is just like a dream and an illusion, then in such a way you won't experience any fear to enter into any places in this samsara. Unlike people nowadays, they would be very afraid and ask for blessings because they're afraid. But for people attained that realization that all the external phenomena are just like a dream and an illusion, they can go to places that is permeated by disease such as AIDS and pandemic and so on. They won't feel fear at all. They do not fear for suffering nor hope for good situation. So this kind of realization from bodhisattvas are indeed admirable. But for us mundane beings, we have lots of hopes and fears, and we live our life in this kind of alternation of hopes and fears. So, if people could truly realize the nature is in fact empty, what a wonderful, free, and unhindered life that must be. And the next part is talking about the Buddha's experience as well. Here are some illustrations from the life of the Buddha before he attained enlightenment. He abandoned the kingdom of universal monarch as if it were straw. There are different kinds of universal monarch. In fact, over here it describes Buddha also as a universal monarch. And in order to transform happiness into enlightenment, the Buddha gave up that heavenly enjoyable life just as if it was just a straw, without any hesitance. That is transforming happiness into enlightenment. So he lived by the river Niranjana without care for the harshness of the austerities he was practicing. What he showed was that in order to accomplish our own ultimate benefit, the nectar of realization, we must have mastered the one taste of happiness and suffer. I think before, many of our practitioners sitting over here, they also give up lots of their fame and social status and all of that. So it is not easy to become a genuine practitioner. This is your way of transforming happiness into enlightenment. Suffering into enlightenment enlightenment is that when you are in a secluded area, in a retreat and practicing, you have to fetch water for yourself, cook for yourself. Well, it is not as suffering as how Buddha eat only 1 grain of rice every day. You probably eat a lot, a bit more than a grain of rice. You probably eat a whole bowl of grains of rice and 3 meals and so on. But still, that compared to the worldly life nowadays, this could be considered as austerity. Then after he attained enlightenment, the chiefs of humans and gods as far as the highest realms showed him the greatest reverence, placing their feet on crown of their heads and offering to serve the honor with him with all manner of delights. So this is again transforming happiness into enlightenment. On the other hand, a Brahmin called Bharadvaja abused him and criticized him with hundreds of times. He was accused of sexual misconduct with an impudent daughter of another Brahmin. He lived off rotten horse fodder for 3 months in the land of King Agnidatta and so on. But he remained without slightest fluctuation in his mind, neither elated nor downcast like Mount Meru unshaken by the wind. Just like how the Mount Meru will not be wavered by breeze and ghastly wind, the Buddha was not wavered by any of those adversities. I think I don't have to elaborate too much on this. You probably already know how Buddha practiced according to the biography. In terms of transforming happiness into enlightenment, he gave up all the luxurious lifestyle. In terms of transforming suffering into enlightenment, the Brahmin Bharadvaja was very vicious. He at first used 500 types of ways to slander the Buddha, but the Buddha did not generate even a single bit of anger or aggression. And then the Brahmin changed his method and used 500 ways of compliment and praising the Buddha, and the Buddha did not generate even the slightest of greed or happiness. So we're not really at the state of the Buddha, of course. When people praise you, at least try not to pay too much attention. And if people slander you, especially nowadays we're using internet so much, then do not pay too much attention to that. For the wise ones, they don't believe in other people's words very easily. When people praise them, they would think, well, maybe that's not true. It's hard to say if the other person, if I do have this kind of merit, if other people slander him, then he would think that, well, this is probably for other purposes, or that person has some different agenda. So I think people should think in this way. In fact, nowadays, because of internet, if you have if you make a little bit of comment on it, there are thousands and thousands of people would slander you. And if your opinion fits into people's mentality or the dualistic mind, then there are a lot of people who will praise you. But those are not of any intrinsic meaning at all, so you should not pay too much attention to it. There was a story of the Brahmin woman. Once she was at a place where Buddha was giving teaching, and within a crowd, the Brahmin woman who's not a practitioner not a follower of the Buddha, put a wooden basket underneath her clothing on her belly and in front of everyone in the crowd. And she said that Buddha had sexual misconduct with me, and now I am pregnant. And after talking so much, even the Indra couldn't suffer any longer from her lying and from her lies. And he then transformed himself into a little mouse and got into his clothing and chewed off the rope that held up the basket to her belly, and then the basket fell down, and everybody saw that she was not pregnant, she was just lying. In the extensive biography, there were a lot of stories like that about slandering the Buddha. There are some more stories in the Sacred Sutra of Great Skillful Means, so you can read it whenever you have some time. And there's a story in that sutra. It talks about a king. I think his name means the fire bestowing or fire offering king. It is also included in the Vinaya Sutra. So the story goes, as the Buddha was invited by lots of kings in the neighboring kingdom, and then this fire offering king felt that if he doesn't invite the Buddha, then he's losing face in front of the other kings. Therefore, he did. He invited the 500 disciples as well as the Buddha to enjoy the feast for 3 months, to accept the offering for 3 months. And after the king got back to his... At the same time, the king gives the order to all the citizens in the kingdom, said that since I am the only one who's going to make offering to the Buddha and the Sangha, no one else could, otherwise I'm going to kill you. And then nobody could, and nobody dared to make such offering then. At that night, after he gave the order to all of his citizens, he dreamt that everything is covered by a white veil, and then he asked someone who knows to decipher dreams. And then the person who deciphered dreams, also a Brahmin, says that to offer the Buddha is in fact quite auspicious. But maybe because the Brahmins from different religions, so he didn't want to tell the king that. Therefore, he told the king that the complete opposite, saying that you should not order the Buddha, otherwise you won't be able to live after 3 months, or even you could lose your kingdom. So the king was really worried and started to retreat, and he then hid in a retreat. So when the Buddha came with the 500 disciples, 500 Sangha members, the palace did not make offering, nor did the citizens. So nobody had meal, and at that time it was summer retreat time. Nobody was supposed to travel anymore, so all of them were trapped in that country where they cannot beg for alms at all. But there was a foreigner who arrived in the country. He has 500 fine horses and lots of horse fodder, and he had lots of faith to the Buddha. So during that summer retreat, he then offered lots of the horse fodders that was not finished by the horses to the Buddha and the Sangha. He didn't offer the best fodder, but offered the ones that's rather quite rotten. When we went to India, Namdrolin Institute, when I was traveling with Phuntsok Rinpoche, we brought lots of Tibetan barley. But after a long time, the barley all went molding, so we had to throw it away. So we had to throw it away, and then Khenpo said that, it's too bad that we have to throw away such fine barley that's grown on the snowy land of Tibet, and now we're throwing it away just like throwing away dirt. Okay, I will stop this story, otherwise it's too much story. Anyhow, let's get back to the fodder. So the horse fodder, they were all of the Sangha and the Buddha were all eating the horse fodder. At the time, Muddagalayana as well as Shariputra, they went to the tip of the mountain and received offering from Indra. But I think Muddagalayana has rheumatism. Anyhow, the only two of them received offering from the Indra, but Buddha didn't. The rest of the Sangha didn't spend a very good summer retreat that lasted for 3 months. Then Ananda felt that while Buddha had already attained full enlightenment, why does he still eat such rotten food? Then, after knowing that the Buddha shared some of his horse fodder in the bowl with Ananda, and Ananda felt it was the most delicious thing he ever tasted, and thought that, so the realization of the Buddha is indeed very different than ours. In the sutra it says that it also because of the previous karma of the Buddha. When he slandered the Shramana, said that such shameless Shramana should only eat the horse fodder. With such kind of previous karma, he then Buddha in this lifetime also had to eat horse fodder with them. So there are stories like that. Also, there are many different stories about how Buddha transformed suffering and happiness into enlightenment, such as the Buddha did not get arrogant at all with the praise from celestial beings, or did not get afraid with different suffering and pain, and the Buddha was in fact in a state of equanimity without moving at all, just like Mount Sumeru mountain, benefiting sentient beings with great equanimity. And then next one, let's go to the conclusion part, where it talks about a teaching like this should really be taught by the Kadampa masters, whose very lives enacted their saying, no complaints when there's suffering, great renunciation when there is happiness. Great Kadampa masters have such kind of realization, where they won't complain, saying that, I'm suffering so much, I'm in such a bad mood, things happen at my home, my roof started leaking, and I don't want to go out, I'm too terrified to go out, my digestion's not so good, I've been having bad dreams, nightmares every single day, I probably eat things that's too spicy, too savory, too oily, and I'm not keeping up with my good health. So mundane beings would do that, isn't it? Mundane beings would go around and complain about their situation every day and all the time. But the Kadampa practitioners, they don't spread any of this complaining and whining language when they're suffering. And when experiencing happiness, we would get arrogant and lazy, but the great masters, they won't do that at all. When they're happy, they know that there's nothing to be happy about in this world. Not only they feel there's nothing happy about all phenomena, they would generate great renunciation. They don't have even a grain, they don't even have a mustard seed sized of grasping towards the three realms.
还有什么？
How would you describe happiness?
妹子子乐呵呵，还有
Blissful, joyful,
啊，哈哈大笑，
laughing out loud.
大笑什么？还有什么？
What else?
啊？笑哈，啊？笑哈，笑哈，笑哈，哭的时候笑哈。
When the great master is going through suffering, they laugh out loud. It sounds like a commercial slogan.
哭的时候香飘飘。啊，这样的就是他这里说啊，就是这样的教养的话呢，应该具有这个。
And over here it says that this teaching really should be taught by the Kadampa masters who's very lively and acted to that sense of equanimity. And they in fact have such realization and have such confidence to give this teaching. But if it's someone like me who explains it, then I'm sure that even my own tongue is going to get fed up and cringe with embarrassment. Because the tongue is in fact the most familiar with you, with who you really are. If the tongue knows that this person's realization is only like this, then the tongue would laugh at the person who's talking about it. And this is, I think this is really a linguistic method of describing. It's a metaphor to get that idea across. I think in different languages, I'm sure there are linguistic methods to describe it as well. I think I myself is the same. I feel embarrassed to talk about it because I think I don't practice, I don't transform suffering and happiness into enlightenment as it is described. So I think many of you probably would laugh at me and my tongue would get embarrassed listening to me talking about it. Still, with the sole aim of making one taste of all the worldly preoccupations, my second nature, I, the old beggar Tenpe Nyima, have written this here in the forest of many birds. So in order to plant this, or in order to cultivate this positive habitual pattern, therefore, Tenpe Nyima, the old man, old beggar, have written this. And the forest of many birds is probably located somewhere in Qinghai province, that's north from here, and it's probably somewhere that's close to where Phuntsok Rinpoche was born as well. There are quite a few of holy sites around that area. Well, as I said earlier, this is translated during the pandemic. I think this is also a spirit of transforming suffering and happiness into enlightenment. And now I conclude the teaching of this Dharma.
Sonam dai tamche zurbanya tomna ni be jana panshe shirgana jira non chuba jubum solen joba